Thank you very much. And a small present. Paldies. Pāriesim pie mūsu
Thank you, and let's go over to sort of the local experience and the green gold. 53% of Latvia is covered in forests, is green, and here we have the representative of the Latvian State Forests and the Communication Director, Inga Petersone. So please, are we managing the forests correctly or not correctly? Your organization is accused lately that you are selling our green gold for cheap money. And if they want to cut something in Amazon, the world lungs, they can do it, but we shouldn't be following the same example. So there are quite opposing views towards the deforestation of the country, and you now have to oppose this myth. Well, I would like to first of all correct that I'm not the head of the communications, I'm just a project manager and I have a boss above me, so that's a small correction from me. My topic today is timber, forests. Most probably all of you, each one of you, has the opinion on how to manage the state-owned forests. Are they managed in a correct manner or not? All of you have something to say about that. But today I'm going to focus more on the energy efficiency. So let me now go over to my presentation, which will focus around the energy efficiency. And the title of it is "The Timber is the Resource for the Future of Our Planet." And by further slides I would like to describe why I think so. I'm representing the state joint stock company, the Latvian State Forests. It is the organization that manages the forests owned by the Latvian government. And let me go over straight to the topic, the global warming that has been already mentioned. I have tried to put these two photos in one slide, our green gold and the polar bear somewhere far, far in north on a piece of ice. What concerns global warming, I think we all have noticed that the global warming is taking place. There's no doubt about that. And what makes us notice that? The last 20 years have been the hottest, the warmest in 4 centuries, especially if we can look back at this summer, you know, all of us were like this. And also the Arctic ice caps are also melting very quickly. Maybe in a couple of decades there are going to be Arctic summer without ice, which is a pity, because we wouldn't like to see something like this only in history books. We would like to see that also in nature. Not only the ice caps in the Arctic are melting, but also the mountain ice caps are melting. An example from Canada. 100 years ago in Canada there were 150 mountain ice caps, and now only 27 have remained, and you can see what has changed, and you can compare the way the situation has changed. And we have all noticed the natural calamities that are taking place around the world, the droughts, the storms, earthquakes, floods, and everything that is happening, not only because of our fault, but also because of the changes that are taking place in the nature. That is sort of the bad temper of the nature, we might say. And you most probably know that, but I just wanted to remind you what is a global warming as such. So the sun is heating our Earth. A very, very primitive explanation so that everybody is clear, so that everybody could follow what I'm talking about. So the sun energy penetrates the atmosphere and heats or warms the Earth's surface. Then this energy is reflected back towards the sun through the atmospheric barrier, or layer, if you will. As it reflects, the energy gets weaker, it dissolves. It is not as concentrated as we previously received it from the sun. So this atmospheric barrier creates various gases called greenhouse gases. And the most popular of GHGs is CO2. And in normal conditions we need this barrier or atmospheric layer for us to survive. However, if this layer is over-exaggerated, for example with the CO2, the reflected energy cannot get back to the sun, and as in this picture described, it remains in the upper layers of the Earth's atmosphere, and that's why our climate is getting warmer and our ice is melting, and that's why the change is taking place. Very simplistic explanation. Was it happening just recently? Why nobody thought about that in medieval times? A simple reason: because we have a fossil fuels based production or manufacturing, or these chimneys, smoking chimneys that we can see, the extensive use of cars, but you know what we saw just from China, and the exhaust fumes that are benefiting or also creating additional CO2s, and the heat that we generate from the fossil materials like gas and coal, for example, creates more and more CO2 than this atmospheric layer can handle, really. So there is an excess CO2 in the end of the day, and that makes the Earth heat up. And the question is, what are the solutions? Does anyone have a say? So I have my own answer. Maybe you have your own versions. Oh, a guy here has a solution. Now you will have to change your presentation probably after the option presented. Well, I have sort of a comment. So the Latvian state forests are the state-owned company, but we are using more gas instead of timber that is grown locally. And this could be a solution. When, for example, the Japanese entered the Russian market, they, cut everything to the roots and they processed everything. And we are leaving everything in the forest, not using it. Well, leaving the forests untouched, it is a different issue. But do we have a solution here? And then we could have the question. We could take the question later in order to keep you on track. Yeah, but the idea is very similar. My answer, my solution is the following. My answer is forest. The forest can solve this problem, the timber, but not for Japanese, as a remark. And I will try to also respond to your sort of question or comment at the end of the presentation, but the solution lies in the forest. We can reduce the global warming by using more timber. Why? Because trees, as they grow, and how can I get the laser pointer here?
Super. No.
Oh yes, I have the pointer. So let's start from this point. As the trees grow, they absorb the CO2 generated by all the industries, by the cars, and as they capture this CO2, and when they reach their maturity or the age at which they are cut down, and of course timber is produced. Afterwards, this timber is used for building and other needs, turned into furniture, and as the final cycle of their life is when the timber cannot be used otherwise but only as a firewood or fuel. And when we burn the firewood, of course we also generate the CO2. At the same time, those trees that are still growing and alive, they absorb or capture the CO2. So throughout the cycle, the life cycle, this is how actually the CO2 circulates. I hope it is understandable from my presentation. And it has been calculated that 1 cubic meter of timber absorbs around 1 ton of CO2, and 1 cubic meter also produces 727 kilograms of O2 or oxygen. So what are the benefits of the timber being used as a firewood and in as a building material? First of all, it is a renewable resource. It's not unlike the oil, which will go dry at one point. If we cut a tree, we may as well plant a tree. And actually, the timber acts as a depository of CO2. And this CO2 is captured in this timber, even if we have used this timber as a building material. And timber can quite successfully replace other materials that are not renewable. And when we produce different wooden products,